Hi, and welcome to another video of SQL tips. Today we're going to look at views, what they are, how they can be useful. So if we go over to our Object Explorer over here and we'll explore good old AdventureWorks database, we've got amongst the folders down here, we've got tables, where you find your tables. You've probably explored this already. Now there is another folder under it called Views, and you've got all these things listed here. What are they exactly and how do they help us? Well, a view is a kind of a saved query. A saved query that we can select as if it were a table. Now I'm going to give you an example. If I go over here and I open a little query here that I made up, and I'll just make sure I select AdventureWorks there so IntelliSense doesn't underline all my objects with red lines. Now that is a query to get the address of the stores. You've got a table here called store, and that joins to another table called business entity address, and that joins to another table called address, and that joins to another table called state. And if we browse our objects down here, you can see that all these the country components are split up into different types of tables here. So that's a fairly complex sort of from clause there, and if we select it, that's great. It gets us what we want. We've got the store name, and we've got the address and the city and the state gathered from many, many tables. That's wonderful. But if you were writing a query, do you really want to have to type out this from clause every single blooming time, joining to state, postcode, you name it? Well, you don't have to. You can save time doing that by using views. Now, if I go over here to views, we have a whole bunch of them. And let's just look at one over here, sales store with addresses. Now, this query has already been done for us, and we can tell if we go to this object here, sales.vStore with addresses, and that is the view name. Now, what you can do is, I'll just start another query here, and I will select from it. Okay, now let's just run that. And hey presto, that has given us exactly the same query that I had in my manually written out query over here. Why? And I'll tell you exactly why. If we look inside this view, and we can do it by right-clicking the view and go script view as, and you've got this flyout table here with a whole bunch of complicated options. But if we just select create to new query window, and what it is the view, this is the view. The view is just simply a select statement, and it's been created and saved as this object name here, vStore with addresses. So in other words, I can run this massive query simply by going select from vStore with addresses, and behind the scenes I'm actually running this complicated thing right here, as you've seen. So that can save us a lot of time. Now, one of the real handy features of views is that they can be treated like any other table, in that you can join from a view to a different table in the same way as you would join a table to a table. For example, and there you go. Now, there is a bit of an issue with views you should probably consider, and that's performance. The query within a view might be a little bit convoluted, lots and lots of joins to lots and lots of tables, and depending on the amount of data or how you're joining to other tables or how you may have your query slower than it may otherwise have been if maybe you had written that query a little bit more simply, like with less joins. Maybe you don't need to join to every table inside that view, you don't need every column. So maybe if you wrote the same query but a little bit simpler, you could get only just the columns you want and it would run a little bit faster. So be a little bit judicious with selecting from views. So views, pretty handy. My advice to you would be, if you're new to SQL writing queries, I would recommend you go and explore whatever views exist in the database that you're working with. And if you've got any and just check these out and perhaps look at the code inside them to see that if you are running a query a lot, maybe check out what views exist to save you time from having to write these queries, and just select from whatever views may exist, and check out the code within them by going, and I'll just go through this again, right click, script view as, create to. What that does is it creates the code in a query window and spells out the code that creates this view. I wouldn't recommend you go down to any of these other types of scripting which can create the command that deletes a view or anything like that. Just stick to create to. Now, probably you've got database permissions that will prevent you from deleting anything accidentally. So that's always a good option, create to. I'll just go through that again, and you can look at the code inside it. So explore views, and if you feel that there's a query that you're running all the time and you would like that created as a view that you or others can use, talk to your database administrator about creating it. And the actual process for creating a view, we'll go through that in another video. Now, for a complete course in everything you could need to know about SQL and queries, check out my Skillshare course, and that will give you a complete rundown on SQL, and you can go in with absolutely no skills whatsoever and come out with enough industry-level skills to be able to take on any sort of query task you could possibly think of. And if you use the link in the comments, you will be able to get your first 2 months membership in Skillshare free. So go check that out, and I'll catch you in the next video.